It's time for me to dissect another top 50 list from Complex. After my two-part video series that dug deep on Complex's top 50 New York rappers, I'm now going through the same exact list for Los Angeles rappers. It's time to shift my focus west and cover the second greatest hip-hop city on the planet. Now, as controversial as these lists may be, as you may have seen in my two New York videos if you tuned in, these are ripe for great discussion, a lot of great points that could be made here, a lot of debatable points. I expect more of the same, more controversy here on the LA list as well. So let's do it again for the top 50 rappers from LA. I'm Ryan, I talk music, here we go. Alright, there's a major change on the LA version of this list, which actually came out in May 2025, so not too long after the recording of this video. For this list, Complex actually listed 3 core principles that they're using to judge their placements on this list. Those are skill as a hip-hop artist, strength of catalog, and commercial impact / lasting influence. I think they took some criticism for not outlining these things in their New York list. I was pretty critical of it in my 2 videos, so I'm glad they cleared that up front. At the same time, I'm not a huge fan of the record sales piece of it, but whatever, that's what this list is. For instance, you might see a more technical, gifted rapper get snubbed for one that sucks but has sold a ton of records. So we'll see where it goes. 2 more quick things before we get started. Number 1, this isn't a blind reaction video. I've seen this list when I wrote the video script, but that was the first time that I ever saw the list. So this is the first time I've really got to articulate my feelings about it. Second, just like the New York list, this is a 2-part video. This is part 1. This is numbers 50 through 26 on the list. Part 2 will have numbers 25 through 1, and that'll be coming pretty soon. So Complex has named Blueface the number 50 top LA rapper of all time. I've heard a little Blueface here and there, and suffice to say, I haven't really been impressed. He's most known for his 4 mixtapes from the late 2010s, including 2018's famous Crip. He's one of the earliest and more successful rappers of the nervous music subgenre, which emerged mostly out of Southern California in the late 2010s. So while there's some merit of being at the forefront of a subgenre and a new style, I'll say that what I've listened to from Blueface, it just isn't that good, and putting him in the top 50 seems kind of like an oversight. But once again, Complex has justified these entries with commercial success, and Blueface had 1 top 10 Billboard hit and 3 albums on the Billboard 200 charts, so there's Complex's justification in the case of Blueface. From a technical standpoint, this guy isn't even close to the top 50, so you average those things together, I'm not sure. I don't think that this is a good pick at all. Number 49 is Blue, and I was hoping to see Blue a lot higher, as he's really one of the most accomplished underground West Coast artists ever. He's seen a modest deal of success for an alt-rap underground artist. He's a talented and calculated spitter. He's got an impressive body of work. His work with producer Exile on albums like 2007's Below the Heavens and 2020's Miles are excellent. He's had a few solid solo albums. He's done collab albums with other producers. He's an absolute icon in the LA underground hip-hop scene. If we're talking about skill alone, he belongs in the top 25 out of LA, no question about it. I've long been a fan of Blues, and for me, seeing him at number 49, that's not high enough. Just the fact that he's been able to remain commercially relevant while being one of the highest octane and most consistent rappers of the past 20 years, I think that should at least warrant a spot in the top 30, which is where I'd put him. At number 48, we have Perico. Complex's justification here is that he adds a contemporary twist to classic LA rap sounds, and he's achieved some pretty good streaming and chart success. Again, I don't really like that streaming and chart success part of this equation, but I spoke in my New York videos about the concept of influence and also record sales, and that seems to be what Complex did to justify a lot of weaker picks on their New York list. At least they're upfront about it here. I think that plays a major part in why Perico makes the top 50 of all time. He's got 15 albums at the time of writing. He's made a myriad of guest appearances over the last few years. Look, he has a very busy discography and really seems to be hustling, and part of that grind mentality that goes on the West Coast. A lot of these underground up-and-coming LA rappers are getting very successful and are not really doing underground music, and I think Perico is a perfect example. I get the appeal of his voice. His style and cadence as a rapper are solid, but I feel like he's not quite as known outside of the West Coast. I don't know. He's not really popping here in New York, I'll say that. So I don't know, putting him in at number 48, it almost seems like promotional in a sense. Though look, he does have redeeming qualities as a rapper, so technically top 50, I can see that. Interesting fact, this is the 3rd straight pick that has something to do with the word blue. We have Blueface, the rapper Blue, and then Perico's debut is titled titled All Blue. So is Complex affiliated with Crip Sets? Rolling Complex top 50s maybe? Next up, number 47 is OhGeesy, member of the Shoreline Mafia Collective and another participant in the early phases of the nervous music subgenre. Again, not one of the most well-known rappers that we'll see on this list. That kind of indicates to me that LA, maybe it isn't as deep as they thought it would be, or maybe Complex is trying too hard to change it up and pay attention to the newer guys. But OhGeesy is an MC that's known for his local appeal. He made a breakout appearance on the late Draco the Ruler's 2017 mixtape Cold Devil. I don't really know if I have enough background on OhGeesy to accurately speak on whether or not he belongs on or off this list, but I'm noticing that a lot of these guys, they're more visible to the streets and less visible to non-LA based critics like myself. And maybe it's more from an outside perspective, like New York, I'm here. I grew up very close to New York and Philadelphia. I was always had my finger on the East Coast hip hop pulse. But I just think of all the other LA spitters that have come out, and then you're including a guy like OhGeesy at number 47. I don't know. I know we got a lot of older heads that turn into these videos, and I'm interested to hear, have you guys heard of 3 of these top 4 picks? What do you guys know about Blueface? What do you guys know about Perico? What do you guys know about OhGeesy? Let me know in the comments below. But I guess if there's a spot for the younger guys, it's going to be towards the bottom of this list. Hey, I mean, these guys haven't had a massive chance to prove themselves yet, so I guess Complex is sliding them in here. What I do know is that like Perico and Blueface, OhGeesy seems to represent that grind culture in the LA hip hop scene. Seems like there's a lot of that going on right now. These guys are street rappers, but they're doing big numbers on streaming. It does also seem like there's still territory to conquer for these guys. Number 46, that's a pick I understand a bit more, and that's King Crooked, formerly and better known as Crooked I. He made his name as a part of the Slaughterhouse Collective featuring Joel Ortiz and Joe Budden from the East Coast, as well as Royce the 5'9" from Detroit. All 4 of the guys in Slaughterhouse, extremely talented lyricists, and this is what turned me on to Crooked I, or King Crooked's lyrical skill. I think that Crook is one of the most talented spitters to ever come off the West Coast, so if we're talking technicality as a rapper, he should be higher. I would put him in my top 40, so I don't think he's that much higher, but I did expect to see him a little bit farther up this list. He's been active since the early 2000s. He's got a ton of different mixtapes, and following that Slaughterhouse breakout, and he's released something like 10 albums, and he's done a number of them with Slaughterhouse group mate Joel Ortiz, a little East-West connection going on there. Look, King Crooked, he's talented on the mic, and while he doesn't bring a ton of conscious or political subject matter, I don't think, he's one of the more enjoyable old school bragging and boasting rappers that I've heard in quite some time. He brings the essence of old school hip hop to the newer school and doesn't sound too antiquated in the process. 46 makes sense to me. I'd slide him in my top 40 though, like I said. And number 45, representing for us white guys, is Evidence. The Dilated Peoples member's been in the game for quite some time now. He's found a way to remain relevant after almost 30 years of doing it. He's an MC, but he's also a very accomplished producer and kind of a behind the scenes type of guy. And I will say that I like Evidence kind of more on the boards as I do than an MC, but his proximity to modern legends like The Alchemist and a few great guest appearances that he's had along the way definitely warrant a placement on this list. He's got a solid solo catalog, but I do think he's best known for what he did with Dilated Peoples, most celebrated for that. I think his influence has been as much behind the scenes as it has been on the mic. He's had a hand in production from songs all the way dating back to Defari's 1997 underground smash Bionic, all the way up to more recent efforts from more modern rappers such as Westside Gunn and Navy Blue. I'm glad to see Evidence on this list, and while again I probably respect him more as a producer than a rapper, I think number 45 on this list makes a lot of sense. Another white guy representing the number 44, it's Everlast. He's a guy who was actually born and raised in part on the East Coast before moving to the LA area and going to high school. He was a member of Ice-T's Rhyme Syndicate in the late 80s, early 90s. That's kind of where he got his start. And then he joined the group House of Pain. We all know them for the song Jump Around, as well as actually some pretty good albums. But it's interesting, really. I don't see Everlast as a West Coast rapper. You hear House of Pain stuff, you hear Everlast solo stuff. It doesn't sound like something that came off the West Coast. It's just the fact that that's, I guess, where he lived at the time. The beats on House of Pain, done by guys like DJ Muggs and DJ Lethal, they sound like they're from the East Coast. But of course, we all know Muggs in his early work with Cypress Hill. That didn't sound very West Coast either. I guess there's exceptions to the rule. I guess it ain't where you're from, it's where you're at. But anyway, including Everlast on this list makes me think that Complex was kind of digging here again to fill out sort of the first 10 slots on this list. So while I guess Complex is technically right here as to Everlast being a West Coast rapper, I don't really think I'd put him in the top 50. I will say this, his second solo album, which was 1998's Whitey Ford Sings the Blues, that was backed by the acoustic guitar driven rap, rock, whatever you want to call it, crossover single What It's Like. That song and that CD mean a lot to me. This was like the second CD I ever owned boomed back in the day. I got it right when it came out in 98. I was a big fan of a lot of different music at that time, but I wasn't really buying CDs until I was a little bit older. But still, despite that, that's not a West Coast album. I don't really see House of Pain as much as a West Coast group, so I don't think I'd include Everlast in the top 50 West Coast rappers of all time. But I like him, and it's good to see him here, I guess. Alright, so Ab-Soul comes in at number 43 on this list. I think this is actually a very appropriate placement. The Black Hippie and Top Dog Entertainment member was one of the most promising artists to come out of the Los Angeles area in the early 2010s. He was quickly overshadowed by names that ended up being way bigger, like Kendrick Lamar and Schoolboy Q there within TDE. But Ab-Soul, honestly, he was kind of the first member out of that crew that had some hype. He really helped put the crew on the map and establish things. He had a couple decent albums in 2012's Control System and 2022's Herbert, and he's had a number of really high-profile guest appearances dating back to the late 2000s. I think about his guest appearance on Danny Brown's Atrocity exhibition. I think it'll be interesting to see where they place the rest of the Black Hippie members. I have a feeling I know where we're going to see Kendrick, but it'll be interesting to see if, number one, do they include both Schoolboy Q and J-Rock? And number two, if they do include them, where are they going? But if Complex do decide to include all four, I'm okay with Ab-Soul as the lowest. That makes the most sense. I think he definitely could have been a little bit bigger had he not been overshadowed by the talent in his crew, but Ab-Soul's a solid rapper, solid artist. Glad to see him on here. will.i.am at number 42, that's kind of an interesting pick. I mean, it's understandable on one hand. He's the Black Eyed Peas brainchild dating back to the late 90s, back when the group was actually making really pretty decent music on those first couple albums. But then they went pop. will.i.am was obviously a big part of that because he was the creative direction for the Black Eyed Peas. The ability to sound trendy, the ability to sell records, that is a component here in the LA list that was not explicitly outlined in the New York list. I think will.i.am, I think he's a solid rapper when he wants to be, but that's the thing, when he wants to be. He's got the potential, but we never really see it anymore, and we haven't seen it in a long time. But again, the amount of records sold, the industry significance, that's really big when you talk about the name will.i.am. It's unfortunate that the Black Eyed Peas stuff hasn't been good in a long time. will.i.am had some decent solo stuff early in his career, but his solo career has not been very good or remarkable either. But look, I can still appreciate his artistry. He's kind of like a weirder, more West Coast, less talented version of Andre 3000. He probably belongs on this list. I think you can put him here. I think 42. Okay, fine. Hey, interesting pick at number 41. This is one I like, actually. The Lady of Rage. She's a Virginia native, so she's not a West Coast native. You're going to see a lot of artists on this list that were not born and raised on the West Coast, but moved there and made their career there. So she joined Death Row Records in the early 90s. She was very visible on some of the label's earliest and most important albums, Dr. Dre's The Chronic, Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style, and her early Death Row appearances earned her a solo deal. She started out with the single Afro Puffs in 1994, which is pretty iconic for West Coast hip-hop, and then she eventually released her pretty solid solo debut 1997's Necessary Roughness. Her rapid-fire, high-voiced flow, it's extremely recognizable, extremely iconic. She's a talented spitter who has top-notch enunciation and syncopation within her rhymes. I think it's another pick that makes sense. She's not just the bully on the Steve Harvey show that would torture Romeo and Bullethead. She's the number 41 ranked rapper on LA's top 50 rappers of all time. Coolio at number 40, that's one I think I agree with as well. I think that's good placement for Coolio. I think he's an artist that obviously had some really important moments in the 90s, but really kind of did fade into obscurity in the 2000s. We didn't really hear too much from him. I think he was on a reality show at some point. I can't quite remember. So the Compton-based rapper had a brief stint with WC and the Mad Circle in the early 90s, and it was around that time that he also showed up on a very high-profile guest appearance off of Ice Cube's 1991 masterpiece Death Certificate. That's off the song Colorblind. That was a very important cut for a few up-and-coming rappers, and this essentially paved the way for his success in the middle of the 90s as a solo artist. I mean, we all know about the success of Gangsta's Paradise. It brought hip-hop to new audiences for the first time. It was one of the first hip-hop songs I ever remember hearing, and he had a follow-up album, 1997's My Soul, which generated some buzz, but nothing like Gangsta's Paradise, and then it was kind of all downhill from there for Coolio. Sadly, Coolio passed away in the year 2022, but his contributions to LA hip-hop pre-2000 were pretty important. So, sensible pick by Complex. Coolio at number 40. Hey, Fatlip from the Far Side, number 39. This is one that I really like. Now, I'm wondering if we're going to see other Far Side members on this list, like Imani, like Booty Brown. I don't really think so, but anyway, Fatlip is great. He was only on the first two Far Side albums, and a big part of his legacy has to do with his 2000 solo single What's Up, Fatlip, which was followed up by his 2005 solo debut album The Loneliest Punk. He's managed to remain relevant through the years with a number of really good guest appearances. His unorthodox syncopated flows are a big part of what helped Pharcyde stand out and seem so original. Look at that, will ya? A couple good picks here from Complex. They're on fire right now. Coming in at number 38 from the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles is Cam, another rapper who made a name for himself off of that track Colorblind from Ice Cube's Death Certificate in '91. Cam also appeared on the Boys in the Hood soundtrack that same year. He was very closely tied to Ice Cube there at the beginning of Ice Cube's solo career. He released his debut album Never Again in 1993, which was well received. He followed it up with his second album Made in America in 1995, which was also one of the better but probably more slept on West Coast albums from the mid-90s. He had guest appearances on projects from Coolio, Snoop Dogg, DJ Quick, Paris, and Public Enemy for years to come. Now, it's not easy to get on an album by both Paris and Public Enemy, so you know he was down for the cause. Cam was known for being a very political rapper at times. He spit some very deeply conscious, maybe even controversial bars depending on whose ears they're reaching. He had a pretty iconic delivery as well, and while he's kind of maybe faded into obscurity a little bit in recent years, I would say that any top 50 list of Los Angeles rappers is probably incomplete without including Cam. Halfway through the first half of this list, if you like what you're seeing, I love it if you join my community, hit that subscribe button, drop me a like. Any engagement with my videos helps me. I'm still a smaller creator. Love you guys, love your support. Comment below, what do you think so far of this list? All right, shameless plug, it's done. On with it. Guys, I'm losing my voice. I don't know if you can hear it, but I got sort of a baritone thing going on right now. After a few early picks on this list focused on some of the newer rappers coming up out of LA, I feel like Complex is starting to shift back to the originators, some of the older school artists as we get deeper on this list. Case in point, Mack 10, number 37. While I might argue that he's a little bit higher, top 30, top 25 even, 37 makes pretty good sense to me. He's had a pretty remarkable and impressive and influential career. His hardcore delivery and unique style on the mic definitely warrant a spot probably on the second half of this list, actually, now that I think about it. He had a pretty good solo career with his 1995 self-titled debut with the most staying power retroactively all these years later, but I think he's best known for being one of the three members of the supergroup West Side Connection along with Ice Cube and WC. And he's had, again, good solo output, great influential stuff with West Side Connection. I thought that album Bow Down was fantastic. He was such a big part of it, but you know, the best years were at the beginning of his career, but I do feel like for one of these West Coast 90s guys, he's remained relevant over the years with guest appearances, with lower profile albums. So I do think he should be ranked a little bit higher. Mack 10 is borderline a legend. So 37, I don't know, but mostly I'm not too mad at this pick. Hey, another rapper that's not an LA native, didn't grow up in LA, but makes this list anyway. It's Catastrophe, also known as Tash, from the Alcoholics. I don't mind this pick at all. The Columbus, Ohio native was such a standout part of the Alcoholics, who changed their name to the more socially acceptable The Licks around the turn of the century. I thought that the group itself had amazing versatility from the three MCs, and Tash kind of stood out the most. He kind of had a rugged voice, but he was able to flow pretty smooth and fast. He had these syncopated raps that really worked well, kind of more of an East Coast style for sure. And he had a modest solo career anchored by his 1999 debut album Rap Life, but Tash's most important contributions to West Coast hip-hop definitely came with the Alcoholics. If you're going to include one member of the Alcoholics on this list, make it Catastrophe. Make it Tash. It's a good pick at number 36. So slotting in at number 35 is Murs, who is one of the most influential post-2000 underground rappers off the West Coast. A very hard worker. He's got a huge discography, and I think this is another accurate placement by Complex. He broke out in the late 90s. He gained steam steadily in kind of the first half of the 2000s before teaming up with Ninth Wonder in 2004. Murs 316, the 9th edition, is his most well-known, his most heralded and celebrated album. It's what turned me on to his music. But since that album, he's had a very solid, consistent discography, a lot of solo albums, a number of EPs, a number of guest appearances. He's part of the underground LA collective Living Legends. His flow, it's unorthodox, it's unique. His subject matter mixes nicely with conscious, almost kind of nerdy bars with street raps. All around, he's a very solid rapper. He's got a very solid discography, very influential in the LA underground scene. Top 40 of all time, LA, that's something I'll gladly agree with for Murs. So in one way or another, WC's name has come up on a couple of the last few picks, and now he finally slots in here at number 34. It's another good pick. Are we on a streak of good picks here or what? I just feel like I haven't disagreed with anything in a while. Complex, I don't know. What's going on, man? Where's the controversy? WC's probably most well known for his work with WC in the Mad Circle from the early 90s. Of course, he was 1/3 of West Side Connection, as I had just mentioned, in Mack 10's section. I do think those WC in the Mad Circle albums are my favorite output of his. Those first two albums that the group dropped were fantastic. I think he's had a great solo career too. 1998's The Shadiest One was an excellent record. He's had some staying power more recently with albums like 2007's Guilty by Affiliation. He's remained relevant into the 2010s with 2011's Revenge of the Barracuda. I think he's kind of slowed down a little bit in the last 10 to 15 years. His output has definitely dropped off, but really that 20-year run that he had between the early 90s and the early 2010s, it's pretty impressive. He was a technical rapper who was not afraid to get conscious and political, but mostly kept it hardcore. He's one of the most well-rounded LA-based rappers that I can think of. I'd argue for a spot in, just like Mack 10, in the top 25. I've always thought him and Mack 10 were pretty much neck and neck, and I think Complex obviously has given the nod to WC. I'm okay with that. All good things must come to an end. Here's a pick I disagree with again. It's a rapper that I think is way too low at 33. That's Carson, California's Kass. How do you put him in at number 33? This guy's a spitter. This guy's got influence, and while he's not some multi-platinum selling artist, you gotta just look at how inspirational and groundbreaking 1996's Solo on Ice, his debut, was. I actually named Solo on Ice as one of my top underrated 90s hip-hop albums in a video I did last year. I'll link it up in the corner. Go check that video out. Kass, he's not just known for that album. He's been pretty consistent through the years. He's dropped a lot of heat as a solo artist. He continues to drop decent projects here in the 2020s, in fact. But I will say that if there's something that justifies this pick so low on this list, it's that starting off a career with such a scathingly, politically, socially conscious album and just kind of setting the bar for yourself that high that he did on Solo on Ice, that's a hard thing to replicate. And there's kind of an expectation that will follow you for the rest of your career. And I think, like in the case of a Nas, for instance, I'm going to go back to my East Coast roots here. He started it off with Illmatic. That was an extremely, extremely hard album to top, but he came pretty close a few times. I don't think Kass ever came close to Solo on Ice, but still, he's a solid artist with a ton of consistency. Kass, easily a top 20 LA rapper. He does not belong outside of the top 25. He's an extremely witty, intricate MC who knows how to spin the head of a listener. He's got some cold punchlines, some very clever wordplay. His flows back in the glory years, the Solo on Ice years, were just dizzying, and even into the newer era, he continues to have that skill. That skill didn't go anywhere just because time passed, but it was back in the 90s. He just danced around the mic with a true passion for his craft. His no-nonsense delivery, once again back to my East Coast roots, reminds me at times of a New York rapper. But look, no matter what he sounds like, he's just an extremely talented MC and a writer. 33 is too low. Complex got this one a little bit wrong, especially when we see who's going to be ahead of him. For my New York video, it was GZA. I kept complaining about how I think GZA was actually number 33 as well, and I kept comparing the rappers that were put ahead of him to him all the way back there. You might see a little bit of that here in the rest of this list. But for now, one of the leading names from the Freestyle Fellowship Collective comes in at number 32. That's Aceyalone. Good pick. Known for having one of the most dizzying, ambitious deliveries presented in this like crazy stream of consciousness, unorthodox rhyme style, I think Aceyalone had just as much success as a solo artist as he did as a member of Freestyle Fellowship. He released two excellent solo albums in the second half of the 90s, 1995's All Balls Don't Bounce, and 1998's A Book of Human Language. His 2001 solo album, Accepted Eclectic, also very solid. He's had a busy career with album releases as recent as 2022 at the time of recording. He absolutely belongs on this list. Here's another guy with 30 solid years in the game with a lot of good stuff under his belt. He's one of the most accomplished, recognizable, and unique names out of a crew of real left field, strange, weirdo, unique dudes. 32, it's a fair placement on this list. He probably cracks my top 30, so not mad at this at all. I kind of like this pick, number 31, Yo-Yo. The South LA MC came up kind of as an unofficial protege of Ice Cube as he began his solo career after defecting from NWA in 1989, and she made a high-profile guest appearance on America's Most Wanted, which was Cube's debut solo album on the song A Man's World. That was one of the most socially conscious moments on an album that had some very memorable music. She had 5 solo albums in the 90s. Her debut 1991's songs Make Way for the Motherlode, probably her most well-known record. That record led the way for Yo-Yo, along with the strength of the Ice Cube guest appearance that she made, and also the song You Can't Play With My Yo-Yo off of her debut. Ice Cube kind of returned the favor here as a guest artist. Now, I really don't want to minimize her prowess as a skilled, aggressive, loud, and proud, commanding MC, but it does seem like her most well-known moments came with Cube. She's a very solid rapper. Her discography throughout the 90s was very strong, so I understand her placement number 31. I probably place her a little bit closer to maybe the top 40, but 31's decent. 03 Greedo at number 30. Greedo has been one of the busier names on the West Coast for the past 10 years or so, despite being locked up for 5 years between 2018 and 2023. He's got a solid amount of albums. His 2016 mixtape Purple Summer is probably his best known release. It's definitely worth checking out if you haven't heard it, though I will warn you, it's a 40-track, 2-hour effort, so you gotta really clear some time if you want to fully digest it. He's had some higher profile guest appearances over the years. He showed up on Draco the Roller's Cold Devil mixtape 2017. He's also shown up on products by Freddie Gibbs, Mack, and Currency. Let's also, though, keep in mind when it comes to 03 Greedo, he's the guy that said in an interview with Billboard that he thought Tupac sucks. So while Greedo's a decent rapper, I'll give him credit for that. Those comments, man, they just follow you for life. I think it's cool that he had the balls to call Tupac fans and Tupac's music out like that, but Tupac doesn't suck. Come on now. I'm not the hugest fan of his, though. I can't really justify a top 30 placement, but I do believe 03 Greedo belongs on the top 50 for LA. So I mentioned back during Absol's pick at number 43 that I'd be really interested to see where the rest of the Top Dog Entertainment black hippie guys landed. Well, we're here at number 29, and it's J-Rock. Fairly appropriate pick, in my opinion, probably most celebrated for his guest spot on Kendrick Lamar's Money Trees. J-Rock has always been a rapper that I kind of hoped was just gonna give us more, and it never really happened, at least not yet. His 2015 album, 90059, I thought that was a solid record. He had two other records in 2011 and 2018, which I thought were a lot weaker. I think J-Rock, he's known more as like a guest spot king, more of this like secret weapon type of guy. When he shows up, it's a vibe. He's got high profile guest appearances on albums from guys like Schoolboy Q, Lil Wayne, Isaiah Rashad, Ray Vaughn. His low voice, no nonsense delivery, it's always been one that I've enjoyed. I think J-Rock's a talented writer. I think 29 is mostly appropriate. I'd probably slide him into maybe 35 or 40 on my personal list. I just think he's always kind of left something to be desired. Having said that, J-Rock, an absolute force to be reckoned with on the mic. Roddy Ricch at number 28 is one that I can understand, though I don't necessarily agree with it. I think he definitely makes it into the top 50 out of LA all time for what he's done in the past, like less than 10 years at the time of recording. But 28 seems a bit high. I'm not like a huge fan of his delivery. I think he mails it in sometimes. He's kind of lazy on the mic. But I think he's been an important part of keeping the West Coast relevant. I think a lot of that circulates around his monster album 2019's Please Excuse Me for Being Antisocial. Complex really justifies his placement at 28 because of the success of that album. The success of the song The Box, how much of a smash hit that was. Complex, again, emphasizing streaming numbers, record sales. And Please Excuse Me for Being Antisocial was actually, I think, the top streamed album on Apple Music of the year 2020 from any genre. I mean, that's pretty impressive, let's be honest. But I don't know, that says something about the masses and their music taste, because I thought that album was average at best. I think that album is way overglazed. As I said, based off influence alone, he goes into the top 50 easily, just not the top 30. After 3 straight more recent picks, Complex rewinds it back to the 90s for number 27. That's Daz Dillinger. Good pick, appropriate placement. He's one half of the Dog Pound along with Corrupt. Daz Dillinger, he's been such a force in hip-hop since breaking out in 1992 on Dr. Dre's The Chronic. Now, he's another contributor as both a rapper and a producer. He's accomplished a lot as a producer. He actually learned how to produce from Dr. Dre, kind of around the time that The Chronic was being made. And while we're focused mostly on rapping here, we do have to factor in the cultural influence. I think that can include the work that any artist may do as a producer, if they're a rapper-producer combo. Daz did some pretty high-profile beats on 90s marquee death row albums such as Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style, Tupac's All Eyes on Me, two just massively successful albums. As a rapper, he's solid. He's got this hardcore, laid-in West Coast flow that can range from laid back to fast and relentless. I think that both from a technical and influential standpoint, I'd make a case for Daz Dillinger in the top 25. 27 makes a good amount of sense to me. last pick for the first half of this list and for this video, it's Doja Cat coming in at number 26. This is one I'm a little more disappointed with. I've never been a fan of hers. I can acknowledge her talent and her influence. She does have a unique style. She's got a somewhat decent flow, but she's honestly more of a pop artist. If you know me, I'm mostly not a fan of pop rap. That's exactly what Doja Cat's body of work consists of. She does mix in some contemporary R&B influence into her projects, which is nice. It's versatile. I think she has more talent as a singer and a songwriter than she does as a rapper. I just don't think we should be talking about her in the same breath as West Coast stalwarts like Dillinger, who was placed lower on the list than her, and then Kass all the way back at number 33. That clears up a spot for somebody like Doja Cat at 26. You have one of the best West Coast spitters of all time being replaced by a pop artist. That just doesn't seem fair to me, despite Complex's disclaimer at the beginning of the article. So Doja Cat at 26, it leaves a sour taste in my mouth for the end of the first half of this list. What are your thoughts on the first half of this list of Complex's top 50 best rappers from Los Angeles? Which placements did you like? Which made sense to you? Which were out of pocket? I know there were quite a few. Let me know in the comments below. I'll really be looking forward to getting into part 2 of this list, as I know it's going to be even more ripe for controversy. At least I have a feeling. It's the top 25, so we'll be getting into critical territory. But hey, it makes for great discussion. I'm thankful to you guys for tuning in. Really hope to see you in part 2. Thanks for being here with me today.